We can use this as a way to help people achieve, not have it take over who we are.
Of bias, but it's up to the tribes to decide what they make public and what they want to keep private.
To potentially like trauma around being controlled, or trauma around having your data and your privacy taken away from you.
Thank you, everyone, and welcome to this important yarn of First Nation experts all across the world on AI and the impact that's having on First Nations people. Since I'm joining from Ngunnawal country here in beautiful Canberra, I'm going to share with you a little bit of our Indigenous knowledge systems and the protocols that we use at Ninety One, and that's the way that we'll operate this particular engagement today. So to start off with, I just want to give the background context, and that says in Indigenous knowledges, what we do is we try to mirror and sustain the cycle of creation that the Mother Earth gives us and displays, not only on the Earth, but in the celestial bodies. And that looks like ceremony for us. And within ceremony, we typically have 3 circles, and that's how we respectfully come into those engagements and do that in the right way. So circle 1 is usually around setting, circle 2 is usually around sustaining, and circle 3 is how to close and making sure that we leave in right relations. So at Ninety One, we utilize a protocol called the Respect, Connect, Reflect, Direct framework. It's adapted by Yucca Porter and Shillingsworth, relational responsive to First Nation academics in Australia. So to start off with, the Respect protocol encourages us to acknowledge where we're joining from today. So for me, I'll start. And I would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the lands that I'm joining from. That's beautiful Ngunnawal country. But in the Ngunnawal country, we have 2 clan groups, the Ngunnawal and the Ngambri clan groups. So I'm paying respects to both their elders and their ancestors. And in the spirit of reconciliation, we also acknowledge all of our First Nation people where Ninty works here in Australia and across the country. So I'm going to hand over to Victor now for his acknowledgement, and then we'll go across the room.
Thank you, Todd. So I am with Oregon State University in the western part of the United States, and we have a land acknowledgement that we'd like to share. So I will read it. Oregon State University recognizes the impact that its land grant history had on Indigenous communities in Oregon. Through the Morrill Act of 1862, which established land grant universities in the United States, the federal government seized nearly 11 million acres of land from 250 sovereign tribal nations with little or no compensation. In 1868, the statute legislature designated Corvallis College as Oregon's land grant institution. Soon after, Oregon received 90,000 acres of federal lands taken from the Klamath, Coos, Lower Umpqua, Siuslaw, and Coquille people to be sold to create an endowment supporting the growth of the new college, which would become Oregon State University. Oregon State University in Corvallis is located within the traditional homelands of the Marys River or Ampinifu Band of the Kalipuya. Following the Willamette Valley Treaty of 1855, Kalipuya people were forcibly removed to reservations in western Oregon. Today, living descendants of these people are part of the Confederated Tribes of Grand Ronde Community of Oregon and the Confederated Tribes of the Siletz Indians. Indigenous people are valued, contributing members of the Oregon State community, and represent multiple sovereign tribes among students, faculty, staff, and alumni. Oregon State University accepts its responsibility for understanding the continuing impact of that history on these communities. Oregon State is committed, in the spirit of self-reflection, learning, reconciliation, and partnership, to ensure that this institution of higher learning will be of enduring benefit not only to the state of Oregon, but also to the people on whose ancestral lands it is now located. And I will pass it on to Ina.
I was hoping you'd choose somebody else, but I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of this land. I'm in Australia, and we do have protocols. We acknowledge the people of this land. So I'm coming to you from Darug land, and so I acknowledge the Cabral clan of the Darug Nation and pay my respects to Aboriginal elders past, present and emerging. I'm a Kiwi-born Samoan or Samoan-born Kiwi, depending on who's winning the rugby. And some of the correlations that we have, that if you go to Samoa, it's the same thing. The village people look after their land, and so you have to actually acknowledge them when you go on to visit the waterways. And so I think it's beautiful. There's lots of correlations between some First Nations countries that we're finding here with the Aboriginal and the Pacific Island communities, and that it's largely due to our connection to land, our elders, our history. And that's why I'm super excited to be here as part of this group, because you're looking at how we can bridge those, bridge and even create new things between ourselves right across the world. I'd like to also acknowledge that to my brothers, now you're all brothers on screen, that some of you have had to get up really, really early or stay up really late. And I felt spoiled because I was super happy that mine's 1 o'clock. So that 1 o'clock in the afternoon, it suited me. So thank you for having me here. Who's next?
Let's go with V.
Yeah, I'll go. Nei rā te mihi kia koutou katoa, ai o koutou pōwhiri mai kia hau. Ai nei rā te mihi hoki ki te whenua e noho nei, nā te whātua o rākei o te rā tainui waka. So yeah, my name's B. Shaw, Brendan Shaw, and I am from the far north of Aotearoa, New Zealand, and I'm currently in Auckland. So yeah, we do say I'm Māori, and we do our acknowledgements a little differently. But yeah, it's that what I just said was an acknowledgement to you people for the invitation to me to be here. So the acknowledgements we usually give are external outwards to we acknowledge the meeting and the people and the invitation and stuff like that. And if you're a Samoan Kiwi when you're winning the rugby, then you must never be a Samoan Kiwi because you never beat us in the rugby. Ever. But yeah, pai kite kia koe te tuahine. Yeah, so yeah, awesome to be here, and yeah, looking forward to the kōrero, to the talk today. Nō reira, kei a koe, Moses. Talking stick to you, bro.
It's been handed over to me.
Yes, sir.
Yep.
Good morning, and Jambo from Kenya. Africa is basically home to 54 countries. We are aware that one of those things that we keep on saying, it is home to, Africa is home to where humanity came from. And I'd like to acknowledge the fact that there's a lot of African heritage that has been lost. People don't know about it. Our tribes and our languages are getting lost halfway up there. And this platform allows me to be able to speak a little about our tribes and our traditions and our cultures and our rich heritage that we have that we want to share out there. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And
Moses.
I'll hand over to who's next.
Back to Todd.
Yes, for our second protocol. So our second protocol after respect is connect. In this protocol, it's about building and sustaining those relations to start off with before we move into knowledge sharing. So in this part, I ask everyone if you would like to share a little bit about yourself and what brings you here today, before we dive into the key research outputs or the things that's happening in our space. So I'll start. My name's Todd Nelson. I'm a proud Dunghutti man, but I've also got ancestral ties to Yuin Nation. And like so many First Nation people in Australia, I've got many bloodlines that flow through my veins, but where I sit in that kinship system is connected to Dunghutti country, which is the mid-north coast of New South Wales. Beautiful country up there in the Macleay Valley. At Ninety One, so I work for a not-for-profit Aboriginal-owned and operated research organisation. And at there, I'm leading the education division. And within my division, we have a research project that looks to produce equity in education systems for First Nation students, educators, and leaders within that system. And what brings me here today is I'm part of a AI for Education bid. It's the CRC bid, which is a cooperative research organisation bid that the government co-funds to produce research that produces both social and commercial outcomes. And I'm the First Nation delegate that's responsible to make sure that Indigenous perspectives are included in that particular bid process. So I've been doing quite a bit of background and pre-work in preparation for a successful outcome. So that's myself, and I will hand to Victor.
Thank you. Yes, so I am an American, but born to immigrants from Mexico. So I have Mexican indigenous roots, and that's part of what connects me to the work that I do. My title at Oregon State University is Broadband and Digital Technologies Adoption Coordinator. I have a statewide position working with communities, organizations, schools, industry, and local government and tribes, trying to bridge the digital divide in general. My focus areas are AI, cybersecurity, and workforce development. So I do a lot of K through 12 STEAM outreach and engagement, working with students in elementary, middle school, and high school. And a lot of that work that I do is using the arts that are cultural based to reach underserved, underrepresented communities who might not naturally gravitate towards STEM subjects or career pathways. So my participation in this is talking a little bit about one particular workshop that I worked in conjunction with the Confederated Tribes of Siletz Indians on teaching AI, but through Native American storytelling. And so I'll talk more when we talk about that project, but I'm very passionate about outreach and engagement with underserved, underrepresented communities because I myself consider myself as a Latino Hispanic adult, and it's what drives me. And I believe in true engagement, where it's not just research done to communities, but it's research done with communities, right, together. And so my job is part of the Division of Extension Engagement, which is a public-facing side of the university, where we take the research at the university in conjunction with community needs to work together to solve the community's wicked problems. So that's me in a nutshell. I'll pass it on to Ina now.
Oh, yo hablo un poco español. So,
muy bien. Perfecto.
So making connections with all of you is quite exciting. So, my name is Ina Lakisoy. I'm a principal here at in Sydney, a school here in Sydney. Where I sit in here is there's so many connections because the two umbrellas that I hold really, is all about innovation and tech. So I have presented at our Australian Council of Educational Leaders several times on iPads, technology, websites, building AI sort of program, which is why I'm excited about this. The other umbrella I hold is all about culture. And I totally, it resonated with me, Victor. I was the first head girl Pacific Islander in a school in Wellington B. So I was born and bred in New Zealand. Yeah, always trying so hard to, All Blacks all the way, no matter the fact that I've lived here now for 20 years, I'm still a Kiwi at heart. And so with that, I've always been like an anomaly. I think that I am slightly crazy, but, totally harmless, But I always found that I was different to many people, and I wanted there to be a way to bridge all different learners, divergent learners, cultural learners, anything that sets people in a place where they feel like they don't belong. That's where I'm at, trying to make sure that they do belong. And so because of that, lots of the work that I've done is I've, I suppose, co-founded and started the Middle Eastern Collective, which is working with Middle Eastern teachers through high schools here to help connect their children with aspiring leaders. And that happened because a child said to me, "Miss, you do a lot of work with the Aboriginal communities," which I do, and a lot for the Pacifica. What about us? And so those are the things that just excite me. Like, yes, what about you? Let's go help you. I work with the Pacifica Support Network, which is a group of leaders. I think we've got about 77 members, and we go out to, I think now there's possibly about 30, 40 high schools, working with them, bringing in people from the police, from government, from business that look like them. So it's all about putting leaders, like you said, it's not a program done to them, but it's a program where we bring people that look like them and it's written by them for them. And so I'm excited about that. I am one of only 4 Māori Pacifica principals that I know of in the state. And so we've now started it's going to be called the Māori and Pacifica Principals Australia, MAPA. And so with that, I suppose there's a lot of people backing us. When you look at the numbers, I think there's like 345,000 people in Australia identify as Māori and Pacific Island, and there are only 4 of us. So I'm out looking for other leaders to sort of say, let's help others. So my whole journey is about not being a caretaker. Caretakers just go and just maintain, but I'm a gardener. I want to go there and help grow whatever it is that's needed. And so this AI in education, I'm looking at developing something different at our school. I feel like many of our minority, culturally and diverse children, they fail the system, but it's actually the system has failed them. And so my passion is to recreate a system that fits the kids because they are also diverse and different. And I think throughout my pathway, I've been able to do that. So my maths, when I taught maths, we're outside playing basketball, doing timing and counting for star charts and things, and it looks like art with angles. But it's that whole thing of like, we need to shift our thinking because we actually lose so many talented people, both in staff and students, because we make them feel like they have to fit a certain box. When really, if we just shift our perspective, so many people can succeed. And I'm living proof of that. Somebody saw me. I didn't fit anywhere, but they made things fit for me. So that's why I'm here. B.
Yeah, kia ora. So yeah, I am an educator. I'm a teacher for primary here in South Auckland in Māngere, but also I'm a tertiary teacher. I'm a kind of like a teacher kaiako lecturer for Te Reo Māori language for adults at Te Wānanga Aotearoa. And when I finished my master's, I had done some AI stuff in the master's. And then when I finished, me and my supervisor started what became the New Zealand AI Educational Community of Practice. And at first, there wasn't many of us. There was some nights, there was literally only 3 of us, me, Tim, and someone else. And over the years, it's grown and grown. And now there's, just the other week, there were 500 active members. And what we do is we get together every fortnight or so. And we run kind of like a PLD. So we get people and guest speakers from all over the place to come and talk about, AI in education. And one of the things I'm proudest about is that we really, really voice teachers, because a lot of what gets decided around technology and education and AI specifically are people who have never set foot in the classroom as an educator themselves. And so they've got people making all these big decisions who aren't educators. And so one of the things that we try and do is really give voice to educators that can help teachers know what works, what doesn't work, how we're overcoming the barriers and stuff like that. We did, Dr. Tim Gander and I, we did, at the time was the biggest survey on New Zealand AI education at the end of 2023, 2024. And that was around effective practice, equity in education and diverse learning needs, like how AI connects to all that. And we've just pretty much been going full steam ahead on that. The start of this year, I started my PhD through Waikato University. And the PhD is literally titled Effective Use and Implementation of AI in Aotearoa Schools. So, I end up talking to a lot of people, and I guess, my passion has become my kind of like second job, if you will, because I'm passionate about 2 things really, language and technology. And of languages, yo hablo español también. Cuando yo vi aquel apellido Villegas, estaba, soy mexicano este güey.
Wow.
And languages, but specifically Te Reo Māori, the language of my mother's side and the Indigenous people of Aotearoa, New Zealand, and technology. And the only technology I can't take my eyes off for the last few years has been AI. So yeah, that's where I am, and yeah, it's a pleasure to be here. And that's why I'm here. That's why I also did the Māori page on the Australian one, the one that Simone runs. So I set that
Excellent.
page up. Yeah, do that page, which is why I'm in this specific meeting right now.
Great. Moses.
Hey, koe,
Yeah,
Moses.
it's interesting that most of us are in the EdTech ecosystem. I am a teacher by profession, 10 years plus. I'm also the founder of a very small organization that is called the African Teachers Association for the Advancement of Artificial Intelligence, which I just started putting up since the year began in 2024. It's been picking up really fast with AI coming in, and I would like to mention that there's a lot of assumptions that are being made in terms of AI and what happens, especially in Africa. I'm also the founder of a small hub, just like you, Victor, where it's a STEAM hub, and STEAM being science, technology, engineering, art, and mathematics. The biggest part of that, not the biggest part, one of those things that people really recognize that they connect with me is that Barack Obama's father came from where his father came from is where I come from in Siaya. Siaya is a very small place. We have got 47 counties in Kenya, and you look at 54 countries, and we're talking about AI this, AI that, and so much is moving so much with AI. Technology is moving at supersonic rates. AI is changing possibly every 3 months. But you look at students in our continent, and you look at teachers in our continent, and I was addressing this even yesterday, where teachers are basically still thinking that AI means artificial insemination. So it's something that assumptions are made lots of times, and part of the reason why I'm here is to basically discuss about how AI is moving very fast, and we are not aware of how it is moving with rural settings like mine, with students and teachers. That gap of AI would widen the gap, and people are making assumptions that it's okay here, and I'm here to basically discuss that in terms of culture, in terms of education, in terms of technology, what's really going on. Yeah. And over to Todd again, I think.
Thank you, Moses. All right, thank you, everyone. It's wonderful to hear everyone's stories. And yes, there's so much synergies. It's a part of our research that we keep identifying the connections and synergies that exist across Indigenous cultures all across the world, and not just here in Australia, that's connected by our songlines. So the next protocol is reflect. Now, this part of the protocol is in the sustaining part of the ceremony. And this is where we're going to discuss some of those high impact outputs or outcomes from our own knowledge, and share a little bit about what's been going on and how we can best support one another with that shared knowledge. So Victor, did you want me to pass it back to you to lead with some questions, or did you want us to kind of just dive into some of those key outputs that we're
I think
starting to see?
Let's go with some of the key outputs, the projects maybe that you all have been working on, and then we'll get into one or two of the other topics. Yeah. So
Fantastic.
Go ahead and start. Let's go in the same order.
Yeah, I might start then. So instead of talking more about outputs, I'm going to talk about insights gained. So my research to date has been really qualitative and very small quantitative at this moment around where are those gaps, where are those opportunities within education systems for equity, but also then what does the tools need to look like in design and implementation for it to actually be effective. And where are some of those challenges to implementation, especially around adoption for First Nations people across Australia. So I guess for me, there's three key insights that I want to share. The first one is around the key concern of most First Nation people that I've heard from, which was somewhat surprising to me, but upon reflection, not surprising at all, is that AI is not human. And AI not being human essentially creates itself as an invader that can go into and cause detriment within the relationships that humans have with people and place and all things in our place, which we define as country. So that's probably the first key insight around some of the challenges of the perception that First Nation people have, and why adoption may be a little bit more challenging for First Nation people in Australia is, in fact, it's not human. So how do we make sure that we're not taking away from those relations that humans to humans have and humans to planet has with a technology which is in fact foreign? The second key insight, and this is a really fascinating insight, but it's something I've reflected on quite deeply, is that voice is the key to equity in AI systems. So like you said, and you mentioned earlier, Victor, and I'm really keen to hear about your storytelling. Voice is the one thing that all First Nation communities have that is shared. We all tell stories, right? We can all share our voice. We might not all have access to documents. We might not all have access to most things, right? Even access to digital inclusion whatsoever, right? So we might not have the technical skills to actually get on there and integrate and use these technologies. But one thing that we can all do is tell story, right? We can all share story. So when you're looking to build equity with AI systems for First Nation people, look at how you can utilize voice and storytelling, right, in those systems. That's the biggest way to open up access. And the final one, and this is a really cool insight that come out of it, was we have an environment in the AI marketplace where a few elite companies are building these large-scale multi-purpose systems. And their general purpose, they're fantastic at doing what they do. But they missed a point. And the point they missed is distributed ownership. AI adoption for First Nation communities that have shared culture, right? Because remember, for us, culture happens in place and all things in that place and the boundaries within that place, right? That's the shared language, shared worldviews, shared principles, shared customs, shared traditions. That happens in place. When you step that up, that's when you talk about Indigenous knowledges. That's when you're talking about the themes and the flow that happens between song lines for us in Australia. So if you want to scale something and make it actually culturally responsive and make it useful, it's got to be useful to place. It's got to be useful to what is suitable for them. And for them to adopt it, they need distributed ownership. They need equity within that system. Right? Can I control it? Do I have any sense making in this process? Do I have the ability to safeguard some of the outputs or what's shared with sacred sites or about language or who we share that with? Right? The organizations that produce products that have that from design, development, and delivery of that distributed ownership are the ones that's going to build those equitable, high impactful, sustainable products. Otherwise, you're going to be another product that's paper wrapped, brought in, delivers a specific surface, and thrown out the door. If you want sustainability, look at distributed ownership, but that needs to be ingrained from conception all the way into implementation. So they're my big three. AI is not human, so be careful on how it invades relations and what it can do, because it can also strengthen relations if designed properly. Voice is the key to access and equity for First Nations people. It's the one thing that we all have that's common. But be mindful, there's people with disabilities, and those disabilities need additional access. And B, if you want to build good products that are sustained and people are going to use them, and they're useful for the people that they're intended to build for, have distributed ownership from the start of implementation. They're my key insights. So thank you so much, everyone, for listening to what I shared there. There's a bunch of products and projects and stuff that this has come from, but originally they're the key things that I wanted to share to everyone. If there's anything that you can think about and implement and do to build equity in these systems for First Nations people across the world, they're the three that come from my research. pass to you,
Excellent.
Victor.
Yes, thank you, Todd. All of that resonates with me for sure. That shared, uh, we call it engagement, right? And it's working with people, not at people. And it's part of what I used. So I had an idea, and I've already done a lot of Latino Hispanic outreach, inner city African American, but I hadn't engaged with the tribes a lot. And I felt the responsibility as an employee at a land grant university to give back, right? I read the land acknowledgement. Our university is from stolen lands. And I saw it as our responsibility to work with the tribes to give education to them around AI, but have them be a part of that curriculum development. And, and so before I even pitched the idea, though, I had to do relationship building. I had to reach out. And this is very important. There's another one of these key insights when you're working with First Nations. Uh, it's a long game. It can take a long time if you are not part of the tribe, right? And I don't want to come in there saying, "Hey, I'm the expert. This is what you should learn." No, I wanted to build relationships and find out what are their needs? How can I help them? How, as the land grant university representative, can I assist them in their educational needs, if possible? And I also want to learn from them, right? I think it's a two-way street. So I built the relationship first, uh, until I got to the point where there was enough trust there that I felt like, okay, I'm going to pitch this idea. And the idea was I would like to teach high school students about AI, but I want to do it through their culture and through the lens of indigenous storytelling. So a lot of the work that I do is taking the arts, which is a safe space for many of underserved, underrepresented communities. It's something that they know versus science, technology, engineering, and math can be very foreign. And so the arts, however, especially based on their culture, is a way of reaching students who might not otherwise pay attention to STEM. So with the Native American community, I knew that storytelling was a very big thing. And so I proposed working together with them, with one of their tribal elders who is a professional storyteller, on developing a workshop where the workshop is actually an indigenous storytelling workshop. It is not an AI workshop. However, we use generative AI tools to help the students tell their stories. It was a pilot program. I did it with representatives of the tribe, some of the tribal representatives, as well as the indigenous storyteller. And the first part of the workshop, which was the whole day, was just about storytelling. We didn't even bring the technology into there until the very, very end. And so it was very interesting hearing about a different type of storytelling because myself, growing up in a Western society, storytelling has always been is like uh, a beginning, a middle, and an end, right? That's the typical art in Western culture. And the indigenous storytellers tell me, well, it's not quite the way we look at it. We see things as circular, right? Where things kind of go around and come back, and it never quite, there's like necessarily a beginning or an ending to many of our stories. It's more of this thing, a cycle. And so it was great interacting with them and learning more about that. And as this group went through helping to develop the workshop, uh, it would go back and they would go back and forth, especially the storytellers, like, this is really cool, this is amazing. And then this is, oh, wait, this is going to replace me because it can tell stories, right? But then he as he kept playing around with the tools, is like, well, not really, because it's only telling stories of certain people in a certain way. and this is not our way, which allowed us to then talk about bias. Why is there bias in these large language models and these AI systems and these tools? And that also allows us to talk about the lack of representation and data sovereignty, right? The reason that if you prompt a LLM is like, give me an image of a Native American in a computer setting, and you'd get these pictures of, the typical like Disney type looking Native American with the headdress and whatnot, right? And it's like very biased and extremely. If you asked for a indigenous woman, they would all look like, the Disney princesses with the Pocahontas, right? With the braided hair and the feather in the back. I mean, just invariably there, you couldn't have it create a different type of an image, but it's because it's been trained on what's available, and what's available is mainly the Western culture perception of what indigenous and Native American culture is. Some of that's actually on purpose, because there are things that the tribes want to reserve and keep private for very good reasons, a lot of their religious practices and traditions. And they're very careful of what they make public. And if you don't make it public and it's not published, then the LLMs are not trained on that information. And so there will always be some type of bias, but it's up to the tribes to decide what they make public and what they want to keep private. However, you have to have that discussion with the students so that they know that they're the ones that are in charge of that. And one of the topics we'd like to talk a little bit at the end is about data sovereignty. What does that mean to you all? What does that mean to Indigenous people? And why is that important? So the workshop was learning about traditional Indigenous storytelling, and then learning about the tools. How does AI work? What is it? How can it help us tell the stories? And the big question was, the products that these Gen AI tools are doing, are they reflective of your culture and your personal identity? And if not, why not? So that's where it opened up discussions about bias and copyright issues and data sovereignty. So it allowed us for a lot more rich conversation around the limitations of the technology, as well as, the potential for good. So we also talked about one of the slides that I put in the second session of the workshop. The first thing I put on there was welcome in the language of the Confederated Tribes of Siletz Indians. And I got puzzled looks of like, what is that? And I said, that is welcome in your language. And they said, oh, we don't know that because that was taken away from us by the government. We were denied our own language. And this, Todd, where you're talking about voice, they were denied to learn their own language for years, and they were actually lost their status as a tribe for several years. They're finally back as an official tribe. But I was just like, oh my word, they have lost a big part of their history. If you don't know your own language, how do you tell your own story? At the same time, we realized that AI could be a way of bringing that language back, because there are some elders that still have that. And so now you can train some of these models to teach the younger generation what that language was like, and hopefully bring that language back into use. So that's an exciting part of the AI technology that we can use. But I just, lastly, what I want to say about this particular workshop is that I ultimately wanted them to take it over completely. And I just, I kind of started it, worked with the tribe, but I want them to take ownership of it, and they further develop it and do peer-to-peer or near-peer education so that the students are teaching other people like themselves. Because representation, just like Anna talked about, to me is the most important thing. Representation, representation, representation. You can throw money at communities. You can, try to do a whole bunch of education, but it's kids seeing people from their own communities in STEAM that makes it possible for them, because that's part of storytelling, right? I can now see myself as a hero of my own story in this thing because I see someone like myself doing this. And that's part of what drives me. So thank you for listening. I'll pass it on to Ina.
So my brain, every time I hear something, it just sparks me thinking about something else. So what I say to you is just to spark thinking, and not to be controversial. But there's a couple of big ideas. We're talking about cultural sovereignty, data protection, and I am part of a group that I know they're concerned about that. So the Pacifica Digital Kids Library, they're concerned, and they've moved towards creating digital stories and animation, saving songs, saving all in Pacific Island language, and have that be co-written to bridge the intergenerational gaps between the elders and the young people, and how to safeguard that so that other AI or companies don't come and take their culture and sell it off to everybody else. The question that I posed there is that sometimes in gatekeeping culture, we're already seeing countries losing or cultures losing their language. I'm a product. I speak better Spanish than I do Samoan because I spent a year in Costa Rica. And one of the things that I believe AI has the ability to leverage the cultural, gaps, and that we should be able to access knowledge, access history, do it in a way that you feel safe. Now, the reason why I don't speak Samoan is because whenever my mum wanted me to speak English so that I could achieve. I guess it worked in school. But whenever I spoke in Samoan and I'd say something wrong, I'd be stood up in front of my family to repeat it so they'd all laugh at me, And so then came that fear of being humiliated and speaking my own language, my family language. I can do my greeting in Māori. I can, like I said, speak in Spanish. But when it comes to my own language, I'm almost traumatized, frozen. So maybe we need to look at AI rather than something that is stealing our culture. It could be something to give it back, especially. So one of the things I'm looking at is pedagogy. That's something separate. So when I talk to you guys about that, I'm really interested in the way we teach using technology. That's why I feel like we're twins. Always been huge on culture and technology. Sowing that seed of curiosity. In order for it to move, so it's not a process or a product, we then put the kids into building project-based learning and then took them to collaborate with other people. The minute that you put, especially culturally diverse or First Nations kids in a community, because we grow up in communities, villages, towns, that then brings that whole working together as a group. All of a sudden, you've got one person who's shy, won't speak to anybody, is suddenly in the midst of a whole group, and the confidence is like it's a collective efficacy that's it just grows, whatever it is. The fact that you said that AI is not human, you're right, but sometimes the fact that it's not human is the very reason why it could help us in equity. And I'll say this in that sometimes the bias of people who've already written a stereotype or a narrative of what they perceive people from different cultures be, already puts us on the back foot, where we have to try and convince people that I can do this. So many cases that I've seen my children involved too, where they automatically think they shouldn't be, because they're Pacific Island, oh, you're in the wrong class because they're in the advanced English class. It's already a perception. So when I ran, and this was PBO, flipping the whole model where we had videos played, I said to the kids, go and learn this math concept, come back, ask me questions. Those kids academically were achieving higher than the cohort that were actually in the gifted class. And when we tried to analyse why, it's because our kids, regardless of what background they were coming from, and it was a pilot group we did, they said what they loved was they were able to replay the video 7 times as opposed to putting their hand up and feeling humiliated or judged by a teacher. It gave them that whole, freedom to learn and ask 1,000 times without the judgment. So in some ways, some ways the fact that it's not human could be a bonus. But the very key that you hit on, Todd, is that it's the human element that needs to be in control of it. This is just a system. That if we hand everything over to it and then we expect it to answer everything, then we've given up our own, our identity, our control, and I think that's where the key is, to actually look at how we use it, because I think we can use this as a way to help people achieve, not have it take over who we are. So that's something that I wanted to add in there. By doing this, by having our cultures evolve, we can save our cultural heritage. And that's because we're losing it through the generations, intergenerational. We're losing it because of location. Many people have moved away from their home roots. And I think that, there's a lot of study. I'd really love to look at the research that we've all got going on and maybe share together. But yeah, that's me. I'd like to hand that over. It's just my thinking for now.
So I just guess with some of the insights, because I'm kind of neck deep doing a PhD, I'm just neck deep in research. That's all I do all day, every day, is basically look at every new paper that comes across and check it out. And so there's it doesn't have to be new to be important, because a lot of the AI stuff is kind of just repeating patterns from education technologies that have already come along in the last decades, There's teachers that still can't open a PDF, So there's going to be some like barriers and stuff like that when it comes to getting in this new type of technology anyway. But yeah, so some insights in a kind of like a Māori-centric or Māori-focused way. So there's research that says that Māori tend to have higher mistrust of government level technology. So, and that kind of harkens to potentially, like trauma around being controlled, or trauma around having your data and your privacy taken away from you, and not being completely in control of what should be, according to the Treaty of Waitangi, which is like the founding document of New Zealand, like Māori should be in control of our treasures, and data and our name and our family stories are part of that treasure. But that needs to be kind of balanced with the fact that Māori are incredibly young. So the average age of a Māori in Aotearoa is 27 years old. The average age of a Pākehā, which is white person, is 42. So there is a bigger shift of younger people adapting technology, and so Māori are a young lot. So you have higher adoption of Māori into technology anyway, So you've got, the kind of like the older generation who have this kind of mistrust, and then you've got this younger generation who are super, super into adopting new technologies. But we lack research as well. We really lack like current research as to what the ideas around Māori are. Do we genuinely mistrust AI, or are we all for it? Or is it the young ones are and the old ones aren't, and that's more of a reflection of age than Māoridom? There's also kind of like the idea, which you see repeated in lots of cultures, that Māori are just one voice. Māori are just one homogenous people who all think the same way and don't have like a million different. And I can tell you, if you go onto a marae and you ask 10 people a question, you'll get 10 different answers. And that is most likely the way that Māori are interpreting AI as well. So again, to have those conversations, we need to have Māori-led conversations. So say a person like me who maybe knows a bit about AI, the good and the bad and the ugly, is like you said, Victor, have someone coming in and just like talking on top of everyone. I know what's good for you. You should do this. It's not going to work. There are lots of passionate Māori educators and technology people, but Māori are very underrepresented in technology jobs. Very, very underrepresented in technology jobs. So we are overrepresented as users, but we're underrepresented as creators, managers, business owners, and things like that. And that connects to another one of the things, which is that AI apps, according to the research, always work better when the people who are using the app have some type of voice in the creation of said app or site. And yeah, so what do you do there? Because you've got a group of people who are underrepresented but keen, so you need support to let them know that that type of pathway is just as accessible for them as anyone else. And then just touching on a couple of things that have been said about bias. So I think that bias is really important, and we should talk about bias. But I think bias opens the door to really important conversations around social justice, because let's say the model was biased because the data was biased. Okay, so what did the world look like that created this biased data in the first place? So, the scientists were all old white men. So where was this come from? It was coming from textbooks, and it was coming from stock photography, and it was coming from movies and films. And let's go back and look, every TV show or advertisement ever, scientist was an old white guy. Yeah. And so what kind of inequalities were happening in society at that time that led that to be the case, that we didn't even consider women or, brown people to be scientists? And then the forward one of that is, if we were to be reintroducing these kind of stereotypes, what would the negative knock-on effects be of young kids searching up scientists and not seeing a single brown person or not seeing a single woman? What are the negative things that could happen if we don't address that? Because that's already being leveraged by some kind of malicious groups. They're already leveraging the bias that exists to kind of put forward their own kind of negative agenda. So, yeah. And just that last thing, that you said about potentially non-humans being a positive thing. There is some research around that where some people have said that they were glad that AIs were able to come in and help them mark, because they felt that the AI would help potentially to combat their own biases. And also, there's a really good article, I'll try and find it. It was just about reflections that a bunch of students had the first time they ever used. It was a writing class at university, first time they ever used ChatGPT. And one of the younger women kept expecting ChatGPT to interrupt her. And then she had this moment where she realized it was never going to interrupt her, and it was also never going to get bored of her and kind of leave her. It was never going to just abandon the conversation. And she had a real head spin around the idea that she had just assumed that eventually this AI would get bored of her, interrupt her constantly and get bored of her and just walk away from the conversation. When she realized it never happened, she was able to relax and converse in a way where she didn't have to be constantly trying to prove herself to the AI. So there's some really interesting aspects for that kind of thing as well. But yeah, looking forward to the research as well. Moses.
I'm trying to get this whole picture where all of us are resonating with something. And one of the cartoons that my daughter loves is Moana. I don't know whether you've ever watched Moana and all this.
Of course we have in New Zealand. We watch it every day.
Yeah. Yes, the whole story of how Moana and all this. And if one of the things is storytelling, that is basically is relayed on cartoons, and I would go back to possibly any of you who have watched The Lion King, and we had this whole Swahili word that everyone in the world knows, and possibly people don't know about it, Hakuna Matata. And people would go, Hakuna Matata, and not so many people know what Hakuna Matata is, but we went saying Hakuna Matata, Hakuna Matata. And B and Anna, there is the story of this lady who was in parliament, and she was doing the haka, and it resonated so well with our parliament back here in Kenya. And there is the All Blacks in New Zealand, where Kenya is a very huge rugby team also with the South African All Blacks. You're All Blacks, and we're what's our team called? The South African team.
Springboks.
The Springboks, yes. And sorry. Yeah. So anyway, my thoughts are storytelling is a very huge part of all this, and there is a lot that we need to be able to resonate with, and I tend to think our cultures basically clash, and my point is that I come in as basically trying to like identify with a lot of you in so many ways with our continent, which has got a lot of cultures that will be lost, with a lot of tribes and languages that will be lost. And part of the reason why I am doing this is to basically address that. Because time is of essence, I will not get so much into it. Todd?
Great. Thank you, Moses. And thank you, everyone. Todd had to leave, unfortunately. It's really tough with multiple time zones around in the world. But I'm so glad that we got at least a little bit of everyone to present and talk about their background and their experience and their insights. So we'll just do a really quick wrap up. The last protocol that Todd was talking about is direct. So it's about closing the ceremony that we started to here. And it's basically talking about the shared path forward. So if each one of you could talk a little bit about how are you going to take this discussion, the knowledge that we've shared here, and move forward with your research, your outreach, your programming, and your community engagement with Indigenous communities. So I will have everyone go through and then I'll just wrap it up at the end. So, Ina?
The program I'm looking at is looking at the way that we are embedding AI with a class that's structured differently. You were talking about not just consumers, but creators and producers. That's what I'm trying to trial here in the school. At the same time, give professional learning to the teachers how to use AI as a tool, but the kids the ability to have AI for 2 hours, just concentrated to get the basics. Then in the afternoon, collaborate to do some service, product, or system to help the community. And so that's where the model is not being done here. So I know it's going to work. I just need the right people. What I'm going to do is I'm going to I'll say professionally stalk so you don't get freaked out. I'd like to see what you're all doing, because I believe there is power in connecting with the way that we're all thinking about AI, storytelling, culture, data, research to support what we're doing, because I know it'll be one of the first here in Australia. And this is why I wanted to be part of this group, because I don't want to do it on my own. Like B, you've got years of research ahead of what we've done here. And it's the same like Victor, the work you're doing with the community. Moses, you're thinking about how to preserve the many diverse countries you've got there. I think there's a way to jigsaw everybody's thoughts so that we're not isolated and having to rethink that. So I'm hoping moving forward to help me with this project, because if it works, I want to then push it out for the rest of the school, is have more conversations and share research and ideas, maybe as critical partners. And so, that's where I'm from, and I'm hoping that this is the first of many. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, everyone. I really would like to connect with all of you and to talk about what we're all doing in each other's spaces in more depth. Moses, I'd really love to know what you're doing and how it's been for you to found your group and your community where you are in Kenya, and the troubles you've had and how you've managed to overcome them, because we took a long time to even just get the word out to our people. So I'd love to be in all of your ears. And Victor, I need to talk about whatever's going on in the background of your I need to know the backstory of so many of the things there. One thing that I really liked, Victor, you talked about how you came in to the community that you spoke to, and you said you didn't really talk about technology at all for the first session, and that is such a reflection of what you were supposed to do in a Māori setting as well. You're there to create relationships, and again, things can take a long, long time. It could happen overnight. It could be 10 minutes. You're in there having, and you're in 10 minutes, or it could be 10 months minutes, could be months between emails. But you just got to do what you got to do. And so it's making me think to look at what cultural aspects may be playing a part in the barriers and concerns amongst some of our educators, because as I was talking about, the historical, colonized trauma around like control and how it connects to privacy, that's pre ChatGPT kind of stuff. But there's a great AI computer scientist in New Zealand, Dr. Tucker Keegan, and he said, like, if it's good, they'll trust it. If it's bad, they won't trust it. And so quality has a lot to do with it as well. Because if someone rolls up in a really good looking car and it's a really good car, you get in it, turns up in a scrap heap, you're less likely to want to get in it. And so quality is involved in stuff like that. And so, yeah, it's making me think that I might need to have a little cross check or have a little deeper analysis at cultural alignment and how culture plays a part in things like adaptation and adoption and things like that. But yeah, no, looking forward to it. Can't wait to engage more with the group. Moses?
One of the things that we've done is with friends like Simone and a bunch of people that have been able to reach out is to come up with a very low cost model of where we want to be able to like take AI in education. And our linchpin is basically teachers. And that's one of the reasons why I have basically decided to formulate the African Association of Teachers Intelligent for Artificial Intelligence. And this is a movement and a platform where teachers will be able to like get very low cost model of how to be able to like address AI in rural settings. Simone is one of those people who has come forth, and we're just basically using internet connectivity, offline and online, having this model and just 10 mobile phones where we go to schools. Anna has addressed this in terms of saying like, okay, fine, what is a project-based learning? And we put it up across, and teachers use just a very low-cost model to be able to like get AI out there. I feel there's a lot of work that basically needs to be done. In essence of time, these are conversations that we possibly need to like have to set up another meeting. I don't want to go into the details of what we're doing because it's a lot of information that you have to put up in this 1 hour would not even be enough. So Todd, Victor, I'd like to give it back to you. I'm just trying to say like there is a lot that we still need to be discussed.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Moses. Yes, 1 hour is not enough, but I'm glad we had this hour, and I'm glad to connect with you all. We've connected a little bit, somewhat on LinkedIn there, and Simone's kind of connected us, and but it's nothing like coming in community and actually engaging, right? I wish we could do it in person, and maybe someday in the future. I have been out to Australia when I was doing like drone education, went out to a conference. So it's not out of the possibility that, go out to the Pacific and I want to go to New Zealand. It's on my bucket list. So we just got to get Moses out there. But no,
Comes an All Blacks game, Moses. Comes an All Blacks game with me.
Yeah. No, I really love this sharing, and yeah, I love the sharing. I love the storytelling. This is storytelling, right? We're all telling our own stories and our struggle. I mean, it's storytelling, a little microcosm in a way. But going forward, yes, I think we should get together again, maybe in another 3 months, and see how far along we've gone, and do another recording. In the meantime, I hope we can reach out to each other, and meet up when we can, share the information online. I know we're starting to put some information on the AI and education. Thank you, B, for putting on the Māori perspective on there. I'm working on trying to get some Native American AI education information up there too. So look for that. And Moses, I'd love to see some stuff from Africa. Thank you very much. Appreciate all of you and the information. I mean, just like, as my mind is going, I got all these connections. Like Moses, you were talking about getting the technology out there, and I know it's really hard because I work with rural communities where there is no broadband. And so how are you supposed to teach AI when you have to have like connectivity most of the time? However, I've been finding ways of Arizona State University has some research where they're actually using the NVIDIA Jetsons to do localized and ad hoc Wi-Fi networks. So they're not connected to the broadband. The whole LLM is on the Jetson, and then you set up a network where the local computers can connect to, right? So you're not going to the internet, and it's all internal, and it's so you don't have to have broadband, and they can connect directly to that and learn about AI and use that in a very remote areas. So there are technologies that allow for a lot of that. So yes, sharing that type of information, how can we get it out there, make sure that we're getting into the hands of the people. My last thing is the equity part of it. A lot of times, as Latino Hispanic from my minority community, and this happens with Native Americans and indigenous cultures, is we get the hand-me-downs, right? And I want to start with the community first, right? Like I do a lot of Spanish first, and then we translate it to English, not English to Spanish. So can we work with the community itself and start there instead of trying to shoehorn whatever we have from the Western communities into these cultures? And so how can we leverage that knowledge and have, start with the indigenous First Nations? Can we start with first research with First Nations and then go the other direction versus us trying to push what we know? So that's my last words. I see this as a cohort of a community of practice, possibly, and look forward to engaging with you. So thank you very much. We will have this recording to Simone, and at some point it will be posted to the AI in Education website. So thank you very much. We'll see you all. Take care. Adios.
AI